So I've wanted to make this video for a while because recently I've been trying to get more into the Zelda series as well as the Metal Gear series. And seeing as how Kingdom Hearts is actually one of my favorite franchises of all time, I do always think of what people say about this game whenever anybody mentions it. And that is usually that people say that Kingdom Hearts is a very convoluted franchise. But I also hear that same opinion for stuff like Metal Gear, and hell, in my honest opinion, I feel the same way about Zelda. So in this video, I kind of just want to talk about, is convolution a bad thing in video game plot lines? Now, to be honest with you guys here, there is a lot more convoluted stuff in general. I mean, if we really want to go there, I mean, we could talk about stuff like Star Wars, which I don't really know too much about, but I mean, it seems like a really convoluted storyline, as well as stuff like books, like comics and stuff like that with DC and Marvel. I mean, where the hell do you even start in those? And books and TV shows and stuff like that. There's a lot of like hard to follow stories, and really, is it really a bad thing for these things to be convoluted? Because if these franchises are so popular, then they must be doing something right. And don't even get me started about Harry Potter. But starting off, we're gonna go to the thing that I know about the least, which is Metal Gear. Now, at the time of this recording, I'm actually just getting into the Metal Gear series, and it's something that I probably should have done a long time ago, seeing as how I had the Metal Gear, Solid Legacy collection, which is a compilation of basically all the Metal Gear games except 5 and some others I probably am thinking that I can't remember. But Metal Gear is something that I've always heard is very convoluted. And really, I guess I could understand. Maybe one of the main reasons why people say this is because Metal Gear games are usually games that are more focused on story rather than gameplay. I'm not talking about 5, obviously that's not the subject of this topic right now. But Metal Gear is always a series that is more really focused on story. And with these games being kind of long, as far as I can tell, it kind of makes everything really complicated, as well as where you're actually supposed to actually start the timeline. I mean, people always say, play the games chronologically, sorry for Metal Gear Solid 3. But I heard there's actual significance in the older games in this series, such as Metal Gear 1 and Metal Gear 2 Solid Snake. So why don't I just start from there? But then it's like, wait, hold on, do I also play Peace Walkers or Portable Ops or those other handheld Metal Gear games? Do I play the freaking Santa Claus Metal Gear game? I don't freaking know. Metal Gear seems like a series that's hard to follow, but I have seen in walkthroughs of Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2 that the game actually does take you into its subtext and actually explain exactly what's going on throughout the entire game. So by the end of it, you should have a great understanding of what's going on. I mean, I watched one of my friends actually play Metal Gear Solid 2 a little while ago, and honestly, at the end of it, while I was still confused in some areas, most of the game actually was pretty easy to understand, except the stuff going on with the Patriots. I mean, was there an AI made back in the 1700s when the actual, government was actually formed or whatever? I'm not too sure. I'm not really into Metal Gear right now. Then there's the Zelda series, which is something I've been trying to get into for the longest time, as well as like Metroid. But the only reason why I put the game down is because, damn, I really don't know what to do. And it actually does kind of remind me, do you guys actually want me to play Ocarina of Time on stream? I recently got the PC port of it, and I was thinking about playing it on stream, so if you guys want to see that, then put it in the comment section down below. But anyways, that being said, Zelda isn't really all that much complicated. When it comes to the games, a lot of them are mostly standalone. When you play something like, I don't know, Ocarina of Time, you can play through that game without really acknowledging the other games in the series. Sure, there is Majora's Mask, but that's the sequel, and of course, you don't really think about Majora's Mask before you play freaking Majora's Mask. And even in Majora's Mask, that game really does center more on Majora's Mask, more than Ocarina of Time, and doesn't really go too much back to Ocarina of Time in itself. I mean, there's barely any mention of Princess Zelda, Hyrule, and of course any of the other characters from Ocarina of Time. These characters just kind of look like those characters now. And then, of course, when you play stuff like Zelda 1 and Zelda 2 and Link to the Past, these games are really much standalone. Of course, there's going to be like references to other games and stuff like that, but not too much to the point that there's too much reliability on those older games. Now, if we're talking about stuff like Wind Waker, which has a really heavy impact from games like Ocarina of Time as well as Twilight Princess, then yeah, I can understand how something like that would be convoluted. I mean, there's a Hero Shade in Twilight Princess, and technically Ganondorf is actually the same exact one from Ocarina of Time, as well as in Wind Waker, and that entire Hyrule was actually flooded. Yep, that entire same Hyrule is now covered by seas. That is fucking insane. But even then, those are old stories now. This is the title's main adventure. Wind Waker is more about Wind Waker than it is about Ocarina of Time. And also vice versa for any other Zelda game. Personally, I haven't seen that many people have talked about the Zelda timeline in terms of being convoluted. Now, if you're actually talking about the actual timeline and where places fit into the whole thing, I mean, look at Skyward Sword and Breath of the Wild. Skyward Sword definitely can stand on its own because, I mean, it is the first in the timeline apparently. And Breath of the Wild is still really confusing on where it is in the timeline, even till this day. But really, Zelda only gets convoluted when you start thinking about the timeline itself. But in all honesty, it's kind of fun to think of it like that, because these games are awesome. And then, oh man, there is Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts is actually something that I do know and give a shit about, and I can definitely say that at first when I got into the series, and I'll still say now, that the games are definitely convoluted. Starting off with Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts 1 is a very standalone and campy game. Much of what happens in Kingdom Hearts 1 is very easily understandable and nothing too crazy happens. I mean, it is the first game in the series after all. Now things do change when you play stuff like Final Mix and then you come across No Name and then you fight him and it's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Roxas? Who the fuck is this Roxas? Roxas.
Roxas!
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 However, things do get more complicated as you go over to the Game Boy Advance, which in of itself was a bad move. I mean, come on, you're making the sequel on the freaking Game Boy Advance console, which is the reason why when people actually went on ahead and played Kingdom Hearts 2, that people were so confused. Because at the start of the game, they're probably like, what the hell? Sora's asleep at the start of the game? And who the hell is this Nominate character? And why is this Organization 13 after Sora? And why is there only about 6 or 7 of them? What happened to the other people? You see, stuff like that is the reason why people probably say that Kingdom Hearts is actually a really convoluted storyline. And it actually gets worse and worse from there. When you play something like 358 over 2 days, you start to see what happened with Roxas before Kingdom Hearts 2. And at that point, it's like, wait, hold on, he was in Organization 13? Wait, hold on, that actually kind of makes sense. I mean, Kingdom Hearts 2 is implied that he was actually a part of Organization 13. But wait a minute, who is the Xion character? And spoiler alert, when she dies, why is it the fact that no one remembers her anymore? Does she matter at all? Why does she look like Kairi? Why does Nominate look like Kairi? But also, why does she have a nobody, but she's also a Princess of Heart? But how the hell did she get a nobody when she technically came from Sora and Kairi at the same time, while Kairi's heart was also inside Sora? Holy shit, I actually legit lost my breath. But you see what I'm saying here? At that point in the storyline, it just got super confusing. And I'm not even like scratching the surface here. This is literally the tip of the iceberg. At the most, it's probably about the fucking middle of it. Like we're going like a mile down. Yeah, we really dug deep there. For me personally, what really confused the fuck out of me was the whole relations of Xehanort and everybody else. I mean, this guy's nut was everywhere. I mean, seriously, you can't walk 2 feet without understanding that everybody is literally Xehanort. It's fucking weird. You have Xehanort, okay? He's like the fucking ultimate bad guy in the entire series. But then you have Terranort, who is apparently Xehanort and Terra combined. But hold the fuck on, how the hell does Terranort actually be? Wait, his name is Terranort now? How the hell is Terranort able to make Xemnas and Ansem? Apparently he's the Heartless of Terra and Xehanort at the same time. But then again, how does that make sense? Because when Kairi was inside of Sora, they actually made 2 nobodies when Sora was made into a Heartless, which was Roxas and Nominate. Because I guess that makes sense, because there was actually 2 hearts that resided inside Sora, but then there was actually Ventus and Sora's heart as well, which actually doesn't make any more sense. But then Ansem and Xemnas are killed and now Xehanort's back? Why is Terranort not back? Why is Terra not back? Why the fuck is Xehanort here but Terra's not here? Where is Terranort? And what the fuck? Why does Riku look like Ansem? Is Riku also a relation to Xehanort as well? Yeah, it's like, what the hell? That right there is what I know about this series. And honestly, just from hearing myself just now, that is convoluted as fuck. But you want to know why it's not bad and why I still love the Kingdom Hearts series to death? It's because the writers felt like it was important. And there's actually an interesting story in the long run. I still love Kingdom Hearts and its convoluted storyline because of how crazy it is and the fact that the writers care. The fact that the story is so articulately planned out is the reason why I love this series. People might call it convoluted and people might call it a bit pretentious, but I don't give a fuck. These games are fucking amazing just for their crazy amount of story. And it's really not all that confusing when you dive right into it. Sure, there's gonna be some crazy stuff that happens in the story, like the whole fucking Dream Eaters and Charities thing from Union Cross, but that's not, we're gonna talk about that today. But these games actually have heart and soul into them, and that's the reason why I care about them so much. And I can definitely see the same type of effect with stuff like Zelda and Metal Gear. So I say that all to say that convoluted storylines and video games are actually not that bad at all. If a game developer actually wants to direct the story and to a point where they're actually making the story one of the most complicated, intricate pieces of the fucking game, parts of the game, there you go, you got it. As long as the story is good, what's the problem? Sure, you might say that Kingdom Hearts storyline is probably bad, and maybe Metal Gear loses your head some places, and Zelda, there's not too much story in comparison, but at the same time, maybe it's just not your cup of tea. Kingdom Hearts, Zelda, Metal Gear are just examples of how convoluted a story can get. Sure, they're extremely difficult to follow, but that's the appeal sometimes. And sometimes these just make it a lot more valuable as games, video games in general.